We're here at MTS Secondary. My name is Jay. I like to go by Jay. I'm in 12th grade.
My name is Yailla, and I'm in 11th grade.
My name is Maya. I'm in 11th grade.
My name is Samantha Sencer-Mura. I'm the state representative for this district, District 63A, which is a part of South Minneapolis. I'm probably in like grade 30 at this point, but I've been a representative for 3 years. So sometimes it feels like I'm in my like junior year of like you kind of know some stuff, but there's still also a lot to learn.
And my name is Scott Dibble, and I'm a state senator for a district to the west of here. It's called District 61, and it encompasses southwest Minneapolis, not all of it, but much of it, about half of downtown, a little sliver of North Minneapolis, the Harrison neighborhood. And I've been in the Senate for, wait for it, 23 years. I've been in the legislature for 25, chair of the Transportation Committee.
Okay, before we get into the heavy questions, let's go back to the elementary question. Like, who was your favorite teacher and, like, why?
Well, I was really lucky that my first ever teacher was an amazing teacher. So I grew up in Minneapolis. I went to Marcy Elementary, which is still around. And my kindergarten teacher was a woman named Bev Bachman, who had been a teacher for many years when I had her and was a teacher for many years after. And I just remember the first time before I started school when I walked into her classroom, and it was just a magical place. Especially I think kindergarten teachers can be really good at like setting up their room in a really good way. There was like a bunch of art stuff. There was a bunch of play stuff. And it started me, I think, on a really good path of really like liking school and feeling like for the most part I had teachers that really cared about me, and they showed that both in the way that they acted towards me, but also just in the kind of physical space that was created. And I think last year I received a really nice letter from Bev Bachman she said, I saw you talking on TV and I knew it was you. I recognized you from kindergarten, and that was really special to get that letter too.
That does sound like a really nice moment.
Yeah.
So my favorite teacher was my third grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. Gallo. And I grew up, most of my extended family is from here in Minnesota. My dad grew up here with his siblings, but he was in the Air Force, so we grew up all around the country and all around the world. And so we lived in Italy at that time. So she was my third grade teacher in Italy, although we did go to a private English-speaking school. And the reason she was so wonderful was because she was just really exuberant, really happy, very positive. She loved the kids. She took an individual interest in each of us. You knew that she cared about you. She knew everything about you. She was really amazing. And I keep meaning to look her up. I haven't yet. But it's not funny you should ask, because I was just thinking about her about 2 weeks ago, thinking I need to go on the internet and see if she's still around and reach out to her.
Maybe today's like your daily reminder.
Yes.
My favorite elementary teacher was actually also my third grade teacher, kind of for the same reason. She was very one-on-one with students, and if you needed help, she was quick to help you. So I feel like it was so amazing having that experience, because I couldn't be like, oh yeah, I couldn't do this because I had a bad teacher, which a lot of people tell me they have troubles with math for that, but I love math because I had a good teacher. So, yeah.
Great. I love that.
My favorite teacher that I've had is also my third grade teacher, because from kindergarten to second grade, I was in school in St. Paul, and then my third year, I had randomly moved to Bloomington, so it was a whole new area for me and everything, and the school was new, and I didn't know nobody. And I was scared, but my third grade teacher, she helped me and helped, get to know people and everything.
My favorite elementary school teacher was probably the art teacher. She was there at least up until 3rd or 4th grade, but she was just, It was like, I went to 2 schools. I went to one in Florida and one here for elementary. And she was just different, and she described things differently. And it made me she inspired me to want to be an artist in a way. Recently, I've been into politics, and I've been wanting to speak to politicians recently, and I've just been thinking to myself and telling other people, one day I'm going to be able to speak to actual politicians and not just watch debates all day. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here you are.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll think about public service yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The same thing happened. I was going around, I was saying aloha, because I love saying that. And I was like, one day I'm going to go to Hawaii, and I did.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
Manifesting.
Speaking of becoming politicians, why did you guys become politicians yourselves?
Concise. The short version is I did not set out to become a politician. I just had a passion for creating change. I was confronted with injustice when I became aware of it. Was in college. I came out of the closet, then became aware of the injustice and unfairness and discrimination against LGBTQ people. Back then, it was all about HIV/AIDS and hostility and indifference and no response to people who were sick and dying, and really wanted to, work hard to make a difference and to change minds and to change policies and change structures. And so I got connected to activism and organizing and community, and I learned about what it meant to do for yourself and when your government couldn't do for you or wouldn't do for you, but also demand better from not just your government, but all the other institutions, corporation, colleges, universities, and you name it. And so that, one thing led to another. I got involved in housing advocacy and civil rights and, et cetera, which then allowed me to become connected to other elected officials, including one or two who kind of took me in as a mentor, as a mentee. They were my mentors, and it was one of them who actually at some point along the way suggested that I run to succeed him when he was going to be leaving office in a few years, which I was quite young and had never really considered such a thing. I thought I wasn't qualified or whatever. And so that opened up a whole universe of insight and possibility. And so then I did, and I won, and here I still feel I am an activist, though, and an organizer. That's how I feel about the work that I do.
How did it feel, having him say that to you, and then you being able to, actually do it? Did it feel like...
It was mind-blowing and terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Something I think we say to people a lot is you might not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you, right? And I think that sometimes it is a person who is very lucky or very privileged to think that politics doesn't affect them, because I think it affects everyone. I think there's many different ways to tell the story of why anyone runs for office, and a lot of kind of points lead to that. But, for me, where I always start is my family and our history and legacy in the United States. So I'm fourth generation Japanese American, and my grandparents were interned during World War II. And so knowing that story growing up, knowing about this injustice that had happened to my grandparents, both of them were teenagers when they were put for over 2 years in internment camps where they had to leave. They were both living on the West Coast, and their families had created businesses, had created lives in the neighborhoods that they lived in, and were forced to leave all that behind and go live in fenced off, communities at the hands of the U.S. government. And so I think that always is in the back of my mind of the actions that government takes is really important. It can change lives. It changed the trajectory of my family, and it makes me think we really need people who are in decision-making positions that are able to make decisions not from a place of fear or scapegoating, like what happened to my grandparents.
That was kind of deep, and I kind of like to hear that. You chose your occupation from something that didn't just happened to you, but something that was like further along your family line, and you kind of like went through it to try to help you, your family, and others in like your community and stuff like that. Now, to kind of like piggyback on what the two of you said with injustice in our federal government, one of the heavier questions we have is, do you think there's going to be like a civil war between us and our federal government?
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people in our community probably already feels like that, right? I think just coming out of the weekend and things that I have witnessed with my own eyes, but also, I'm continually getting sent messages recounting horrific stories, videos, right, of parents being ripped away from kids left in cars on the side of the road after their parents were taken, businesses that have been raided, lots of violent, literal violence that has been used. So I definitely think that there are segments of our community that already feel like, we're at a civil war. Obviously, that's not something that has been like declared or anything like that. I will say that it certainly feels closer to that than it ever has in my lifetime, right? I think for many of us, and especially here in Minneapolis, and especially here in South Minneapolis, it feels like we are just being attacked by our federal government, whether it is taking away funding for programs that are vital to help people live in our community, to, little violence that is happening to our residents. We, saw a resident killed in our community not far from here last week. I think that as a representative, I'm in a complicated place where I'm both not wanting to alarm people, right, and not wanting to bring the temperature up, and also trying to be real with people about what's happening, and especially people are seeing things with their own eyes and wanting to let them know, what you're seeing is real, right? This is a really, really scary time, and to figure out what power we have at the state to try to stop the terrible things that are happening, and to try to, protect our community right now.
Absolutely. Agree with Representative Sencer-Mura that we feel like and we are under attack by forces of the federal government. And we have to be honest about that and be truthful, and be resolute, and just engage in that conversation with our community, to be truthful. At the same time, as Representative Sencer-Mura talked about a couple of generations ago, I talked about the failures of the federal government that affected me and my community. And we can go back to the Jim Crow laws. Our federal government and our government in general has failed people time and time again and been the enemy of its own people, despite the promises of our country of free, fair, equal, everyone equal in the eyes of the law, everyone counts, everyone matters. The repeated failures are an artifact and a feature, an antecedent, we call that, of history. And through sustained action, through that continuing to believe in the promise of this country, we've managed to overcome. I mean, we did devolve into civil war. And I really hope that we don't again, and I don't think we have to devolve into civil war in that classic sense. We definitely have to stand up. We have to fight back. We have to resist and use the tools of power that we have available to us, which are many. And I strongly believe it'll be a long and hard struggle, but I think we will overcome. A big piece of that, of course, is using the instruments of democracy, which is elections and voting. Another, of course, is the courts. Another is using the tools of policy formation that we can reach to as state elected officials. Federal power is greater than our power, but we have things that we can do. And we can also show up as leaders for our community time and again, just to be strong and resolute. So that's what I believe.
You talked a little bit about Renee and what happened to her. One of our questions is, what do you think happened on 34th in Portland when she was killed?
Yeah, I mean, and I can say what I saw, right? So I actually I lived not far from there. I happened to be having breakfast just a few blocks. So I think I was leaving that meeting at probably about 10, which I think was maybe half an hour after she was killed. And so, went right over there. So was there not too long after it happened. And, what I saw when I got to the scene, is an image that I think will stay with me forever, which was, and I think this image has now been printed in newspapers and probably will become part of our country's kind of collective memory, which was, her car that she was driving, a deployed airbag, blood scattered all over the car, and then right next to the driver's seat, a bunch of stuffed animals, right? And so that image of a mom's car, right, I think really stands in contrast to what we have seen from some of our federal leaders who are calling, her a domestic terrorist or things like that. So, seeing what I saw with my own eyes, hearing from people who were at the scene, witnessing some of the videos that we have seen, I do believe that ICE agent killed her. And I believe that we need to have an independent investigation, right? We can't have the federal government only be accountable to themselves. They need to be accountable to the people. And we need to be able to figure out what happened and hold people accountable. I think a fear that we have had since ICE came into our community, and we've had lots of conversations with our local police department about this, is who holds these federal agents accountable. I think from the first day they were there, something I heard about a lot was just they're not following traffic laws, right? Laws that anyone else has to follow about not running red lights, not speeding, making sure that you're not changing your license plate constantly. Those are things that all of us are expected to follow in our everyday lives. And from the beginning, we were seeing federal agents who were not following those. And we've seen that escalate, right? It starts with breaking those laws. It ends with taking someone's life and not being accountable. And I think we should all be really concerned about that.
I agree. I believe that she was killed, and I believe the use of force was not justified under the protocols of procedure that police must follow, that this agency must follow for itself. I base that on eyewitness accounts, on video that has been taken from a number of different angles, and from expert analysis that I've read of those videos in the newspaper and in other places, combined with the claims on the part of the officials in charge of those agencies that would be positioned to have some accountability and who are responsible for an independent investigation, which is what we need, of course. We need an independent, objective investigation, and that clearly is not going to be done. So I also believe that the federal government is engaged in a deliberate attempt at propaganda and cover-up and an attempt to hide and reshape and reform the perception of what exactly happened. And I think that's unacceptable. I think there should be an independent investigation that includes state-level officials. I'm grateful that the Hennepin County Attorney and the Attorney General have decided to form their own investigation with the available information that they can have access to. A lot of that, of course, is going to be excluded from them, but as many eyewitness accounts and as many videotape accounts, et cetera, that they can gather so that they can provide some perspective from an objective perspective on what happened. My view, I think, is fairly objective. I think it's fairly straightforward. We saw her being friendly beforehand. We saw her moving away from the officer. We saw him shooting her from the side. And I think it is unconscionable what happened, and there needs to be a demand for transparency and accountability. We will continue to raise our voices.
What are we going to do with further, at this point, I think I'll say further abuse from ICE? And secondly, there's been a lot of reports that Trump and our vice president has said ICE has 100% immunity, but our police department does want to fight back what ICE is doing. What does that entail for us, and like, what are the dangers that could come with that?
It is not true that federal government has immunity or preemption or exemption from state and local laws, to the points that were raised earlier, our traffic laws, our standards of procedure, et cetera. Unfortunately, though, I just have to set expectations. The chamber that Representative Sencer-Mura serves in is equally divided with the same number of Democrats as Republicans, and Republicans have indicated no inclination to see this what's happening with ICE from the same perspective that we're sharing with you here today. So our ability to pass those laws is limited. So we have the power of our voices and our ability to engage with community and to engage with the media and engage in a wider conversation. We also have the ability to engage with our local officials, to set our expectations that local police start taking actions. For example, I feel like when ICE is inside private spaces in a hospital, they should receive a trespass order and be asked to leave. So I'm talking with our mayor and our sheriff to say, can you please write trespass? So that's something we can do. We can pick up the phone and do those sorts of things.
How do you guys feel about ICE using administrative contracts as warrants, stating them as warrants to come inside of public places to detain others?
So I think what you're talking about is having an administrative warrant versus a judicial warrant, right? And I think that, those are terms that I was not familiar with a year ago, right? I think many of us weren't, and I think we are all kind of learning, right? And so as I understand it, ICE is not allowed into private homes or private businesses if they only have what is an administrative warrant. They need a judicial warrant, which is signed by a judge. And so that's the guidance that we have been telling to citizens, to businesses, to everyone, make sure that you are asking for a judicial warrant. And I think that we have really seen that message resonate with community. I've seen amazing videos of people just being really clear about what they need. And sometimes it is working, right? And so I want to, give that message to community, like it is working, it is stopping. I have seen it with my own eyes. And sometimes they will then come back with a judicial warrant. And so, it's only prolonging for a couple hours, but maybe that is giving a person time to call their lawyer, call their family, to figure things out, to be able to take a beat. And then we have also, and I think, one of the things we are seeing is just this escalation of different tactics and more law breakings. I think it's really important that we're continuing to educate people on knowing their rights. Like, I love that you all know those terms. And I think, the more people that can know that, the better. And we need to be honest that we're also seeing them not follow the laws, rules, and protocols that they themselves say they will follow.
Kind of referring to what you just said, what consequences are we going to see these agents have, and how long will it take for us to see them get the consequences for what they're having? Because there's a lot of fear and a lot of tense when people either hear about ICE or when they hear these situations are close to them.
And also, do you think the ICE agent that murdered Renee Nicole Good is going to get away with it?
Well, I'm really sad and sorry to say I don't have a good answer for you. We just don't know. We're going to work really hard that, all of the law breaking that we've seen, breaking down a door in the absence of a judicial warrant is a violation of the Fourth Amendment of our Constitution. We are a constitutional democracy. We're a system of laws. We're governed by laws. And when we see those who are in law enforcement breaking the law, there needs to be accountability. But those who are in a position of holding those individuals to account are giving those orders. So we need to find other avenues of power to affect that outcome. Now, we are also a system of a division of powers. We have the separate branches of government. This is all happening in the executive. And then we have the legislative branch and the judicial branch. Unfortunately, now at the federal level, we see the legislative subordinated itself to the executive. Mm-hmm. And if you just read the New York Times yesterday, 85 to 90% of all issues in dispute that are brought to the appellate level of the federal government are decided in favor of the executive. Mm-hmm. So we've got a consolidation of power in the executive, which is very, very unhealthy for democracy. So we need to look to the next electoral outcome to maybe change that balance of power. So it's kind of a long game that we're talking about here. But we need to stay connected, we need to stay positive, we need to continue to be truth tellers. We need to do what we can do to either raise our voice or affect policy at the local level, so that justice can be heard and done for Renee. And we have law enforcement who is actually tasked with upholding the law.
Just one last question for you guys. It's kind of a statement as well. I also want to add on to like saying the fear aspect of a lot of people. With Trump getting into office, before he was really elected, the favors were in Kamala heavily. And then suddenly they changed on election day. And I know a lot of people, maybe with like what's going on with ICE or other bad things Trump's is doing, they don't want to admit that they may have voted for him. But I'm hear a lot of like people say they voted Kamala, yet Trump is still our president. So I guess what I'm concerned about is I feel like during his midterm, I feel like he should be impeached just because he hasn't done anything good for our country. But realistically, it's not looking that way. Like you said, I think you said legislative branch is kind of bowing down right now, which is bad for basically everyone. And so my concern is that there's no way to change what he's doing right now, and we're going to have to kind of just wait until the next presidential election to get a sliver of hope to change what's going on right now. Do you guys think that that's true, or do you guys think that maybe there's a chance for us to get hope sooner than that?
Well, I'll just say there's always hope. There's always hope. And that's not just wishful thinking. That's a strategy. You make a decision to hang on to hope. When I was first, I was young. I was just a little bit older than you, like 3 or 4 years older than you. And literally dozens and dozens of my friends, LGBTQ people, gay men who were just a little bit older than me, were getting sick. They were dying. They were doing so without anyone caring about that. The government was openly hostile. Other institutions of our country were either indifferent or hostile, blaming us, refusing housing, refusing health care, refusing to do research. It was bleak and dark and terrible and awful. Yet we hung on to hope. We believed in our ability to prevail and overcome through the power of love and humor and art and community and anger and sustained action and connection. We just stayed in community, stayed connected. And we knew that it would be a long, we had been, obviously scorned and abused and ridiculed for generations. And we were still present as LGBTQ people. We hadn't vanished into thin air. And so we knew we had that ability to sustain and persevere. So I can't tell you what the time horizon is. I can tell you that, we have the midterm elections coming up in November. I am very optimistic. If we can protect those elections and make them free and fair, that we'll do well. Every indication is that people have had it, and they're going to vote differently than they did 2 years ago, and that'll give us a one step or a half a step towards change. But even that won't be enough. It's going to be about what people decide to do. Keep showing up. The tens of thousands of people who are in the streets of Minneapolis, and all over the country, over 1,000 rallies and protests around the country, tells me that change is coming and change is afoot.
I guess then it makes me think of, a question for you all of what is most scary for you right now, and then what is giving you all hope?
That's my question too.
I'll say kind of like before we got to the interview, I shared that someone who I went to school with previously and I consider a friend got detained by ICE literally right across the street from where I live. And there was videos of him getting dropped off once again like 9 minutes away, being thrown out of the car. They said that he was beaten and slammed. I go on, any social media, my friends are posting that ICE is outside. Me and my mom are kind of afraid to look out of the window. Maybe we'll see an ICE car. Maybe they'll be knocking at our door next. So I say our fear is we don't know who's next. And at any moment, it could be us. And honestly, I'm not sure I really have too much hope, but still looking forward to finding hope.
I'll give you a suggestion. You have a beautiful school community here. A lot of great people here who love you, love all three of you a lot, I can tell. And the climate here is really, really positive. So maybe look to these incredible people, your peers and your teachers and all the adults here. That's a good thing.
One thing I'm afraid about is just kind of what Jay said, adding on to that. Like, ice has been all over my neighborhood. I don't know if anybody's seen the video of ice slipping on ice, but that's like right next to me. And there are, like 4 of my neighbors have gotten taken away, and they put signs up all around saying, I don't know how to put it. They weren't illegal. It was said ICE took away this person on this day. And there's just signs up everywhere. And just knowing that my mom is 38 and Renee Good is 37 with a child that was waiting for her. It's just like a scary situation to be in. And just also knowing that happened 5 blocks away from my grandma. And my dad was deported too. So it's like, it's just like a situation all over again and a repeating cycle that's never going to stop. And like Jay said, there's not really a lot of hope left because what Trump said, they're just going to keep coming because we're a blue state. And yeah, there's just not a lot left that we can really do.
Well, Jay and Maya both really said a lot of things that I think too. But another thing that I'm scared about is my family, we're Hispanic. We have like a whole bunch of different type of Hispanics. We have Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, all types. And what I'm scared about is because ICE has been in my neighborhood too. And my mom's only a couple years younger than Renee. I'm scared, like, because my mom's Mexican and Puerto Rican, but she looks more Mexican. So I'm like, well, what if they go after her next? That's what I'm mainly scared about.
How about we actually flip that same question back on to the two of you? What are your fears and what are your hopes?
Well, I can say that this is like, even though we've been talking about really hard things, like talking to you all, I think has been like, in the last week or so, the most hopeful moment for me. And I do think like, we get a lot of requests to come to different places. And like, I always am like, anytime a school group wants to talk to me, I will go. Both because I think it's, I do a lot of work with education. I think it's important for me to get into schools, but also because like, it really does fill my cup. Because every time I talk to young people, I just find like a clarity that I think is missing sometimes with older folks of like, it's not that complicated, right? People should be able to live lives with dignity and safety and not be scared to go outside. And a 37-year-old mom should not have lost her life. And, in our line of work, we are debating all the time. We get really into the weeds of things. We get really into the complexities. And it is really nice to come up for air with young people and be like, it's actually not that complicated. So this was a hopeful moment in my week. So thank you.
I'm scared in all the ways that you're scared. My husband is half Mexican, so we're connected to the Latino community and the Latino history and legacy. I'm not necessarily scared for him. He presents not quite as so driving around. I don't think he'll necessarily be profiled, but I'm scared for all of my friends and all the people who live around me, and I'm scared for my niece, our cousin, or her cousin, my niece, is a teacher of kindergarten students at Bancroft, many of whom are immigrant children or the children of immigrant families, and already one of their grandfathers has been taken away. These are kindergartners. They're all scared for themselves. They think ICE is going to come after them, or something terrible is going to happen to their family. And so I'm scared about the trauma that will linger even after this terrible time is over. And quite honestly, I've seen our country go through these dark, dark times and prevail and emerge better. But it's not guaranteed that that's going to happen unless people show up. But that's what gives me hope. Like I said earlier, you're showing up, just being in this school and seeing all the positivity and the general feeling of happiness in this school gives me hope. And the tens of thousands of people who are showing up on the streets, but also showing up to bring food to people who don't want to or can't leave their homes, or bring their children back and forth to school, or pick up their mail, or just people in Minneapolis and all around here are showing up for each other in really loving, caring, deeply connected and committed ways. So I continue to have a deep, deep well of hope.
Thank you for your time. You guys were amazing.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate talking to you guys.